may have only been my very first day of summer vacation, but I was already all set to start high school. And I was set to take ninth grade by storm. I had already begun to fantasize about the incredible things I would do when I got there. My summer goal was to learn Eddie Van Halen's eruption guitar solo so I could shred it at a morning assembly. I was determined to work my butt off all summer so I could make varsity soccer as a freshman. And I was intent on continuing my middle school-long academic streak of earning high honors. These were the thoughts and aspirations racing through my head as I sat joking around with some of my closest friends at midnight, June 27th, 2015. I was there for an 8th grade graduation party when suddenly, my laughter was interrupted by a headache worse than anything I had ever felt. I complained that my headache was so bad I needed to go upstairs and grab some Advil. But halfway up the stairs, I sat down, put my head in my hands, and complained that I couldn't go any farther. Only minutes later, I threw up, passed out, and my friends urgently called 911. 3 weeks later, I woke up from a coma. My earliest memories are of being wheeled through a hospital. Many of them are just me opening my eyes for a few seconds, closing them, and then nothing. During my first conscious weeks, I was covered in wires, had tubes down my nose and throat, had significant cognitive deficits and memory loss, was and still am partially blind for the rest of my life, and I was fully paralyzed everywhere left of my spinal cord. I couldn't sit up, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't read, and I couldn't even write my name on a piece of paper. My doctor said I'd be lucky to walk again. Returning to school was not a when, but an if. Still not entirely sure what my diagnosis entailed, and being the modestly determined kid I was that year. After hearing of my new condition, of course, the first worry that popped in my head was, now it's going to be really hard to make varsity soccer. But then again, I was on tons of drugs. My original mantra went something like, I'm not going to let this incident affect me at all, and I'm going to get back to the exact kid I used to be. But I think I'm still going to realize this experience will transform me for the rest of my life. It won't make me worse, and it certainly won't make me better. It is only helping me to embrace and embody the true me. After the night of my original incident, I spent a month and a half living at Boston Children's. As it turns out, the cause of my incident was a brain hemorrhage caused by an AVM, or arteriovenous malformation, which is a tangle of abnormal and poorly formed blood vessels. The night of my hemorrhage, the AVM ruptured, and I was rushed to the hospital where I had holes drilled in my skull and drains inserted into my brain to relieve the swelling. Then, surgeons went into my brain to stop the bleeding and remove the excess blood, allowing my brain to continue to function. They did this just in time since, by that point, I only had an estimated 30 minutes left to live. Once my brain had somewhat recovered, I needed to get the AVM fully removed, because if I didn't, it was likely to cause another hemorrhage. About 6 weeks later, I had a long and complicated surgery. My surgeons worked for 14 straight hours, from 7 in the morning to 9 at night, and were ultimately successful. Shortly after, I was transferred to Spalding Rehab Hospital. I remember spending hours reeling to walk with 2 sweating physical therapists working together to just try to hold me up. I had absolutely no movement in my left leg, so I would wear this device called a leg immobilizer. One physical therapist would move my left leg forward for me, and the other would hug my chest to keep me from falling down as I stepped forward to the right. At that time, trying to walk, or as I should probably say, trying to limp, was so exhausting that I would often return to my hospital bed from physical therapy and just sleep for the remainder of the day. Additionally, while in the hospital, I needed help with almost every aspect of my daily life, and I would never have expected to want so badly to return to just doing my own chores. At Spalding, I met some really sick kids and heard some really, really sad stories. I met one boy who was a classically trained cellist and an avid club soccer player. Sadly, he had been diagnosed with brain cancer and undergone numerous brain surgeries, the last of which has significantly altered his personality. I remember watching him walk through the halls. Periodically, he would just lash out, screaming inaudible phrases and crying. I met another boy who was incredibly kind and incredibly bright. He had been shot in the chest, though, and just barely survived, but only to spend his following few years living in Spalding rehab all by himself, while still trying to graduate high school, take the SATs, and apply to colleges. Every patient in every room had his or her own tragic story. Seeing and hearing these stories made me realize, for once, how lucky I was when compared with many of the other patients. It reinforced for me how, when scaled appropriately, what seemed like immediate problems or setbacks in everyday life are actually insignificant. And it emphasized for me how grateful I now should feel to be alive, to be living comfortably, and to just be living well. Now, living in the hospital for so long, I grew to really appreciate the value of articulating my feelings. There would be times when I would just fixate myself on a problem I thought no one else could possibly understand, struggling to remember who would come to visit me earlier that day, but coming up with nothing. I would keep it inside for days, but once I could finally come up with the right words to describe my horrible feelings to someone else, it would bring me a sense of comfort. Not because I ever thought they'd be able to understand me, but just because I thought I'd given them the information to try. And then, on September 11th, 2015, I was discharged from the hospital and finally able to go home. The days of my homecoming and homecoming party were some of the first days I thought I truly felt the immense inspirational power of moral support. Those were some of the best days of my life. Although, once I finally settled in at home, my days were filled with long car rides, doctor's appointments, and outpatient rehab. Time after time, I would hear that my recovery was going to be a marathon, not a sprint. The more I heard it, the more I could really loathe that phrase. Additionally, at rehab, I was consistently told to accept my new normal and come to terms with what I can and cannot do. Everyone agrees that if I work my butt off, I can't get back to doing the things I love, but they will never come to me as easily as I used to. Oftentimes, the only reason I kept working at all was because I understood that I didn't have any better options. There were times when I would ask myself questions like, will I ever again do anything I love? Will I ever feel as good as he owed me? Or will I ever even feel successful? During times like these, I found it immensely helpful to talk to other people who had been through experiences similar to mine. These conversations provided me with a sense of comfort, but I was always looking for some kind of home run way of reframing my situation, one that would optimistically make all my questions and worries disappear. However, after numerous discussions, I found myself without the answer I was looking for. It wasn't until much later that it occurred to me that maybe there isn't one perfect way to reframe my situation or comfort myself despite such ongoing adversity. Unfortunately, this solution won't come to me with the snap of a finger. Rather, I've come to learn that it will just be something in the back of my mind, providing me with comfort and wisdom from experience. Now, probably one of my biggest worries going through all this was that I would never again play soccer as well as I used to. But after I thought about it a lot, why I loved soccer so much came down to two key points. Number one, I loved doing something I thought I was really good at. And number two, I loved doing that thing even more when I got to do it with a group of my best friends. It then occurred to me that if soccer wouldn't continue being my primary extracurricular, then I can work hard and ultimately get those two key points to apply to whichever new activity or team I wind up choosing. Since my hemorrhage, I have by no means fully recovered. I still struggle to do things with my left arm. I'm nowhere near as mobile as I used to be, and I will always face problems with my partial blindness. I still have a long way to go, but 2.5 years ago, going to high school full-time like I am now seemed like only a vague possibility. And I never would have imagined to have raised over $40,000 in an effort to thank Boston Children's Hospital for saving my life. Looking back on what I've been through and forward to what I still have to come, I try to keep in mind a piece of advice that was given to me by the father of a friend. He told me that going through rehab and ultimately the rest of my life, I need to look in all directions. I need to look forward at other people or friends of mine who have either overcome similar adversity or are now living the way I want to live. This is necessary to keep me positive, motivated, and just working hard every day. At the same time, though, I need to remember to look backwards at those less fortunate and be appreciative of what I have, what I've been given, and what I've accomplished. And then, the final step is to look within and to see how this experience has impacted me, taught me, and ultimately come to change me. Throughout my endless process of recovery, people continually tell me to reinvent myself and find my new passions. I'm still not ready to let go of who I was, but I think I am ready to abandon the seemingly perfect me and attempt to uncover the ever-evolving true me. Thank you, guys.